Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, continuing building the Estes Doorknob mid-power rocket. So the construction phase is basically complete. So the fins are on and the motor mount's in. The only thing that is not in that's kind of a final product, I guess, the rail buttons as discussed. I've got a hole here. This one still needs to be drilled out. I'm actually going to go and I'm going to run a power drill through this. Just because this one needs to be expanded, obviously. This one's pretty good, but I want a nice smooth cut. So yeah, it's time to move on to the finishing steps. Now, I did not in the last video, but in between now and then, I have put a layer of glue, so just my usual wood glue, as a fillet in here. And I decided I would typically, or at least I would strongly consider using a bit of this stuff. This is epoxy clay to make the fillet for this rocket. But between that being pretty serious overkill and some level of difficulty that I'm going to have in painting this, I decided I didn't really want to use the epoxy clay. The epoxy clay would definitely make it really strong, undoubtedly, but I've already epoxied it in place, so it is quite strong to begin with. I'm not going to put anything bigger than an F in it in all likelihood. And I don't really love working with epoxy clay. I mean, it does sand down, at least in theory, but it is rather difficult to do that. And because I end up wearing gloves when I'm working with it, I don't get a nice smooth fillet. It ends up being not smooth, and it would have to be sanded down quite a bit to resolve that, and I usually just don't do that for whatever reason. So I decided that the wood glue fillet is probably more than I need for this situation, so I'm just going to stick with that. But it is time to deal with the grain in the fins. Now, some of that problem I've resolved already because, if you recall, we had to do a decent amount of work beveling that. But I am still going to use some wood fill here. I've got a cup, and in the cup there is a splash of water. Now, I would guess maybe this is somewhere on the order of a quarter to a half teaspoon, so it is not particularly much. I am going to add some of this stuff. Now, this is pretty new, so it's still nice and pasty. The older it gets, the more rigid it is. This has still got some good elasticity in it, so I don't need as much water. I'm going to put in, this is probably like half a tablespoon, somewhere on that order. Hopefully that'll be enough. Hopefully it's not too much either, because I like to have just the right amount. But that's what I'm going to use. This stuff, seal it up tightly. There we go, put all my weight on it to close it back. So I would like that to not dry out. It is eventually. I'm not going to use it fast enough for it not to dry out, but it would be nice if it didn't. Alright, so I'm just going to stir this up. I got a disposable spoon here that I don't actually dispose of. I keep it around for this kind of thing. And I'm going to do my best to hydrate this stuff because I want to paint it on. So I've got a not particularly great at this point paintbrush. This one I use for two things. One is applying this stuff, and the other is applying sanding sealer, which is right here, which is the next phase, but not for this part. This stuff, the brand that I have, I've tried a few. I rather like it. You could certainly get away with basically just spackle, more or less, some kind of wood fill that's used for plugging holes in drywall. That would be fine. I like the consistency of this stuff, where it starts, and you can get this in a variety of colors if you really cared about such things, but the white is good enough. I rather like the white too, because when you seal with this, it is kind of hard to tell what you've done and what you haven't. This stuff, at least, it's pretty obvious because where you've applied it, it's white, and where you haven't, it's wood colored. So that is a nice way of doing things. Alright. I'm going to stir this up a little bit more with my brush. I don't know that this is going to be enough, but hopefully it will be. I'm going to just brush this stuff on. Yeah, this probably could have stood a little bit more water. I like to say that I have like a magic ratio, but the truth is I do not. It's really hard to get trace quantities of water into a cup like that, especially when you're just filling it out of the sink. You could certainly use an eyedropper and be very precise about such things if you wanted to. I have just not found that to be a particularly good use of my time. Probably would be nice, but yeah, not really worth it. Alright, so I'm just brushing this on. This is a little stiffer than I usually do. The goal is to just have a nice smooth layer. Remember, we're not trying to add anything here. In fact, once this is dried, we're going to sand it all off, or most of it anyway, almost all of it, because all we're trying to do is just fill in the grain. Alright, good enough. I'm going to brush on the top and the back face as well to fill in, because when you cut across the wood like this, the grain appears as like little pits. We don't want that. Alright, I am now going to go on immediately to the back side of this. This is probably not as essential as it is in some cases, because this is a fairly thick bit of balsa, but when you're working with balsa in general, it is prone to warping if you get it wet. So because this is at least slightly wet, we would like it to be evenly wet on both sides. So doing one side then immediately doing the other means that if there is any warpage going to happen, that is going to happen, it should happen evenly. So one side ought to kind of cancel the other side out. That would be the intention at any rate. So I'm going to do my best to smooth this out as best I can, use up what's on there before I go looking for more. I probably am going to need a little bit more. I don't want to leave any particularly obvious clumps here either, which I could see a couple. It tends to get a little clumpy on the flatter surfaces. So something to be avoided. That you can just run the brush over it and it smooths it right out and shouldn't be a problem. I also want to brush off, because I am brushing the tube somewhat inadvertently. I'm going to try to brush that off so I don't have to sand it as much. Alright, so first fin is almost, there we go, basically taken care of. And then it's just the process of repeating. Yeah, I'm pretty confident I have enough for 2, maybe 3 fins. So I'm going to have to whip up another batch of this stuff. It is kind of hard to anticipate, especially if you kind of undercook the amount of water that you usually put in. This, like I said, this is a little bit stiffer than I typically produce. So I probably add more water than usual. But again, this is something I kind of eyeball each and every time. I do not have this down to an art form, which, or to it, well, I guess it's not to a science, right? Because I don't know precisely how much I use. I guess it is still a bit of an art. But regardless, if I have to make a little bit more, I have to make a little bit more. It's not really a problem. I'd rather just not have a giant wad of this stuff in the bottom of the cup that I don't end up using. That would be much more irritating. I try to be efficient with my construction materials. Alright, painting the back of this thing. At least, it's not really painting, it's more just like filling in gaps. So definitely a bunch of pits back there, because I didn't actually sand the back of it. I didn't round it, I didn't bevel it. It's pretty much just the straight wood. The top shouldn't be as bad because I did some modicum of work on it, but not much. Alright, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this amount up, and that'll probably be as much recording as I actually do with this part of the project, because, I mean, let's face it, you don't need to watch me do the exact same thing on all 4 fins. And if you do, well, thanks, I guess. I mean, it's not going to be any different. One thing that is worth mentioning, so remember one of the fins had a bit of a chunk missing out of it. That's it right there. So I'm going to try to put a little bit of excess fill in there as I paint it, yeah, like that. And that's going to be my solution to that problem. Might not be perfect, but again, I mean, this is wood fill. It's exactly what it's supposed to be doing here. I'm using it slightly off label, but not quite. I mean, I chose this particular brand because it did say, hey, one of our main uses is for filling in grain and balsa, so great. Also, if you happen to get any little blisters in your glue fillet, this stuff will take care of that problem as well. I'm going to just kind of smooth this out because it's a little light on the fill in some places on this fin. I have a little bit of excess here. And of course, we need to get the top. One thing that I didn't do with these fins, which I have done in the past when I bevel or airfoil them, is I did not harden them. I have in the past used a bit of CA glue on the edge. And I didn't do it because when you do this step, sometimes that doesn't, putting this stuff on is going to affect the edge, for better or for worse. I might end up hardening the edge, but only after I've sanded this stuff off, sealed it, and I'm basically happy with it. Might even wait until after I put on the prime coat of spray paint. Not entirely sure. We'll see what I do. Alright, so that's two fins down. They are in reasonably good shape. Just looking over, I see a couple spots where I've got like small globs, and I don't want globs of anything for any reason. It'll sand off, but I mean, I prefer not to have to do that. Alright, I am out of this stuff, so I definitely need to whip up more. This seems like a good place to wrap things up for the time being, because it's somewhat repetitive. Anyway, next video, between now and then, I will probably end up putting the sealer coat on. I might end up putting another layer of this on, depending on what the grain looks like. But I suspect I'll probably go from here to white prime spray paint, sand it off, and then be ready for the paint job. The paint job on this, I have to say, I'm not particularly looking forward to because it is somewhat complex. There's a decent amount of stuff going on. See how that ends up. So I will see you in that video whenever it happens to be. See you then.